MECHBORN by Turtle Juice is aiming to release sometime during the fourth quarter of 2026. It's a really slick, really smooth roguelike deck builder. It's a card game that plays so quick it feels like an action game. It has some interesting mechanics, like modifiers based on where exactly the card is placed in your hand, along with all of the logistical strategizing you'd expect from something that has a procedurally generated map. Not only this, but one of the cooler things about it is that your mech choice is something of a personified version of your card deck. You really get to see the mech move and interact, depending on what cards you play while fighting off great kaiju monsters. Now, I managed to play the playtest for this one. If you want to check out my video based entirely on that, it'll be linked below. For now, what I can say about it is that even though it's a playtest and not a fully completed experience, I put several hours into it and had fun the whole time. I think I played over 3 hours just of the demo playtest. It created a very addicting gameplay loop that makes me really excited to see it when it's all put together and finalized. And by then it's supposed to have a whole 12 pilots to choose from, 3 mechs with 3 sets of unique interchangeable pieces, a fully roguelike campaign, endless swarm mode, daily challenges, and even custom battles. Hi, I'm Empty. I'm a bit of a mecha newbie who has discovered a deep passion for giant robots. I've decided to make it my mission to play every single mech game ever made and debrief my thoughts about them here on this YouTube channel. This video is a look at games that haven't hit the market yet, but I also do full reviews, first looks, overviews of mech genre crossovers, and even complete mech game lists per consoles. If you'd like to keep up with us here, go ahead and hit that subscription button, but if you just want to talk about your favorite level in Titanfall 2, go ahead and drop that in the comments below. Thanks. 3 Battletech-loving brothers came together under the name Pillbug Games and started putting together something of a dream mashup based on one question. So what if MechWarrior 2 played like Mount & Blade? Enter Drop Command. So what does that entail? Grand-scale battles that play out in cockpit view of combined arms with min-maxing down to each and every single pilot, deeply faction-based and political emergent storytelling as groups you haven't even met yet duke it out across the stars, all wrapped up in a nicely old-school visual set with interesting game worlds, beautifully painted loading screens, and so many interesting ways to grow an empire, be it diplomacy or war. Now this is another one I managed to get hands-on with. If you want to check that out, it will be linked in the description below. Again, what I can say is that I've really loved the creativity with the environments. There were cool and unique actual alien-feeling worlds. There was a ton of depth in each and every action. The combat has some super cool sound effects in it. This is one of those sorts of games that I think if I had it in my hands when I was like 12 years old, I probably wouldn't have wanted another game for years, because there is just so much possible with this one. Really exciting project. Titanfall is one of those games that we just can't get enough of. The contrast between big mech suits creating all sorts of heavy destruction juxtaposed with the agility of a pilot that puts parkour champions to shame is just so fun to play, which is seemingly a huge inspirational point to the new co-op movement FPS game Earth's Edge. Instead of going a PvP route, as a lot of these games tend to do, this one is purely cooperative experience, being built for 1 to 4 players at a time by T-Mug Studios, and is set to launch sometime later this year. Each one of the mechs, named Ember units, is going to maintain full customization, while the pilot Scorcher characters themselves seem to be more based on archetypes. The goal is to harvest some sort of new crystallized mineral called Lunum. The catch? This Lunum seems to have turned hordes of mankind into some sort of mineralized gem zombies. The coolest part? Probably the fully destructible environments. This is like Titanfall if it was Deep Rock Galactic, in a lush green outdoors environment with full-on double-jumping, grappling hooks, wall running, and giant robot combat to boot. Custom Robo was a short-lived and niche Nintendo franchise, most of which never saw released outside of Japan. the last games of which did actually make it to market in North America as well in the mid-2000s, but on the GameCube and the DS. And since Nintendo doesn't seem to be interested in bringing back this franchise, somebody else has got to do it, right? Introducing Yellowfall Games with their game, Battlecore Robots, set to drop on Steam Q4 of 2026. Essentially, what we're looking at in this one isn't giant mecha, it's little mecha. Characters have arena battle tournaments with these customizable robots. These take place in an isometric or bird's eye sort of view and can contain up to 4 players. Battlecore Robots is taking on this idea to include not only story mode against NPCs, but 4-player local play or online battling in a diverse set of arenas with unique mechanics, game modes, or just crazy component combinations. It's not often that I run into a game that really nails down this dark and gritty atmosphere so well. There's something that feels so tactile about the bleakness of the color palette, the crunchiness of the old PlayStation-style textures, and so absolutely frightening about the ambiance leaking out of Beta Decay by Rotoscope Studios. This one appears to be a first and third-person open-world survival shooter. Looks to have some heavy immersive simulation elements, a deep injury system, a dynamic economy, and big freaking robots. I get Stalker and Forever Winter sort of vibes from this one. It's a dystopian trip with factions, corporations, evil syndicates, and it takes elements from hardcore survival games like having to eat and drink and sleep, but then also has a maybe Kinshi-like system in place with recruiting and commanding around subordinate NPCs, roguelike survival against hordes of monsters, but then also spacecraft invasion building. There's just so much to look at, and I don't even know where to start, so I'll just say the game describes itself as a dark RPG, where you can become an engineer repairing starships, a mech pilot commanding war machines, or a syndicate leader, or a raider of labyrinthic neon cities. Now let's break that overcast mood and take a peek at Nightshift Galaxy by Tiny Galactic. This one is a brightly colored and less than serious sort of anime parody about 3 freelance pilots with transforming mechs. A robot jet piloted by Kit Kanzaki, who's good-natured but perpetually broke, a wall-walking spider tank driven by the steadfast Zakat Lasali, and finally, the space pirate who flies a high-speed spacecraft. These 3 somehow come together in the year 80XX and fight arcade-styled battles in a beautiful science fiction space of cities against waves of enemy robots, battleships, and alien kaijus. So I try to do one of these videos to showcase upcoming games every so often, and pretty consistently through all of them I get comments about Project Landsword by Mezzanine Software. This one is a top-down view, destruction-heavy shooter with elements pulled from action stealth games, of all things. Its goal is to really stir up the arcade feeling of classic shoot-'em-ups with something that feels very new, very modern, and very fun. Something I will say that stands out to me about this one is its graphical set. I don't mean specifically the highly polished pixel art it works with, but specifically the color palettes used along with the military realism base. The setting is in a desert of Mars, so we've got some really bright colors, which feels very fresh. All these sandy orange tones on top of tan streets, minimal greens, and the occasional shrub or bright blue river. It's bright, but it's not going for a cartoony or cel-shaded or overtly anime style. This mostly seems to be taking inspiration from mechanical realism, and for that it looks really cool. If you want to check out the demo for this one, it is available on the itch.io page associated with the game. Now, if I understand correctly, this is a reworked version of a fan game called Battle Mercs. Essentially, I think the idea was to rebuild the old Battletech Crescent Hawks real-time strategy games from the late 80s and early 90s into something acceptable for the modern gaming market. As the game, or maybe the interest in it, grew, it had to step away from being based on an established intellectual property and become its own. So now we have Battle Mercs by Retro Action Games. This one is about having battles, everything from the grand to the small skirmish, just so long as it takes place between giant metal suits. One of the more interesting things about the way combat functions here is that there's a time manipulation mechanic, randomly generated missions, and a deep world of tactical depth, customization, and pilot stat sets. This one should be a hit for anybody who's ever played MechWarrior and thought, I wish I was playing this game, but on Super Nintendo instead. Inspired by old-school first-person shooters, Mech Log Zero by Skylord is planned to come out later this year. This one takes place in a unique setting with dragon characters who live inside some sort of dying, mega-sized machine god world, and it's combined the first-person shooter aspect with a third-person mech that functions on both land and in air. The visual set of this one is going for a PS1 or N64 low poly, and seems to go from having washed out and foggy colors to starkly contrasting vibrant brights. Another thing that makes this one interesting is that its level layout is that of a Metroidvania, meaning, spiraling, winding labyrinth, instead of a traditional shooter game level system. This, along with the knowledge that certain areas are only accessible while in mech or on foot, and that the weapon sets not only are weapons but create new movement possibilities, that's interesting. This could be very cool.
Welcome, explorers, to the Stardust Frontier, your home away from home in the far reaches of the Milky Way. At least if you make a habit of ruthlessly ripping your homes apart for their raw resources like we do.
Effort Games is creating something really new and interesting with Stardust Frontier. What I mean by that is that this is the first time I think I've ever seen a mecha party game. The concept here is that you and your friends all take control of a single limb of a mech and have turn-based battles. The thing is that each of you will be connected via a third-party device, like a cell phone, and will play a minigame on that device in order to progress the combat in the main game. So this is a sort of like Jackbox games or Mario Party sort of thing. One person buys the game and then everybody else plays it, sort of thing. It's workable in person or through online play. I could definitely see close-knit friend groups or specialized live streamer communities really getting a kick out of this one. Okay, so it's planned to have dozens of these micro-games, as they call it, unique character abilities, procedurally generated runs, and lots of customization. And that about wraps it up. Hopefully at least one of these games seemed cool enough for you to throw onto your wish list to keep an eye on for the future. Since this is only 10 upcoming games, if you know any more that are worth a shout out, feel free to let us know down in the comments. Thanks.